Yeah, thanks so much for having us here today. It's so great to be back in Hong Kong. And by the way, huge shout out to YY, who's one of our developers at Lightning Labs. Fun fact, he's a rapper. So check out his music, and he actually holds the mic like a rapper, which is impressive. I'm so grateful to work with an incredible team. Shout out as well as Michelle, our head of finance and ops, who's here, our also head DJ. And thank you for having us. So, hey everybody, Elizabeth, CEO and co-founder at Lightning Labs. So we're building the leading technical infrastructure for Lightning networks. I think everyone here knows Lightning is an open protocol. Anybody can build an implementation. We're the lead developers of the LNG implementation. We've got about 90% of the network, but there are a variety of other implementations out there. And while we're the lead developers, we have an entire open source community of devs, I'm sure some folks here as well, that have contributed to LNG. So that's the Lightning side of things. And then we all just heard about the protocol that we're working on for multi-asset Bitcoin and Lightning, taproot assets. We designed this protocol. Lalu, who's our CTO, aka Rosti, that's where Beatbox came from, developed this, but put out proposed BIPs for the community, Bitcoin improvement proposal. We've had a lot of community contributions. TapD, which is the software for taproot assets, is open source, and we've had a lot of great people contributing as well. So really focusing on building the key technical infrastructure for Bitcoin and now bringing assets to Bitcoin and Lightning very importantly.
Cool. Okay, just like maybe what I mentioned before, so recent days, Yosemite also released some demos of the multi-hub taproot assets on top of the Lightning networks. So my question would be, so what might be next step of the taproot assets, and kind of maybe explain more about that?
Yeah, so back in October, we released the alpha version of the taproot assets protocol, and what that did was it enabled people to issue assets on layer one, on Bitcoin mainnet, an early version for that. And we have a number of people in the room, developers, startups that are already building on it, issuing assets on the base layer of Bitcoin, which has been awesome. And shout out to all of you guys here. So that was the first step. And then the way the protocol works is you first issue assets on mainnet, on Bitcoin layer one, and then you can put them into Lightning channels, which like with Bitcoin, it already exists on layer one, and then you move Bitcoin into Lightning channels. So the next step is the Lightning part. We just heard a great talk about taproot asset channels. And the team has been hard at work on this. And it's one of these things where no one's ever built this before. So everyone's always like, when Lightning, when release, and we're like, we're working on it as hard as we can. And our team has just been incredible and hard at work to get this code out, right? So 1 week, a little bit over a week ago, it was Thursday of not this past week, but the week before, we did a demo of the first taproot asset channel, which was a point-to-point, so it was single hop. And Lalo, our CTO, tweeted that. People were excited about it, but we knew we needed to have more of a demo out. So then here in Hong Kong, Thursday night, Hong Kong time, it was Thursday during the day in the US, we did a demo of the first ever routed multi-hop transaction of, we've heard a lot about Beatbox today, and we saw the demo just now, and this is important because people are wondering, okay, we proposed this, we've been working on it and developing, and now we said, okay, here's an actual asset on mainnet, and we've shown that it can be routed over Lightning. And in terms of what's next, well, one of the major things that we heard about as well is the point of taproot assets is both to have the Bitcoin blockchain be the security layer for asset transactions and bringing assets and stable coins and fiat, tokenized assets, collectibles, all sorts of things on the Bitcoin chain. But then to enable the transactions not only over Lightning, but to have Bitcoin, the asset underpinning these transactions, right? And there could have been an alternate architecture. And in fact, in the early days, we talked about, okay, we could have channels all in an asset, like USD stablecoin channels or HKD stablecoin channels. But that would have required liquidity in each asset, and it would have actually been harder to route and not have had the interoperability. So instead, we made the choice, rightfully so, that all of the assets would only be at the edges of the network. And this draws from the principles of the internet. So actually, the early internet pioneers decided to keep complexity at the endpoints, and in the middle, to have much more simplicity. So we're drawing from that principle. So a node on the Lightning Network, in the middle, can purely have Bitcoin, and without even knowing it, they're routing covered assets transactions, right? And then people that are running nodes, I know we have people here in the room that are doing so, they earn fees for routing. So the goal of bringing assets to Bitcoin and Lightning, of course, for end users, we know it has scalability, low fees, instant transactions, but for node operators, it brings a lot more transaction volume to them. And then it's very cool because people say, okay, you're in Bitcoin, you're Bitcoiners, now you're bringing other assets to Bitcoin, right? But what this means is Bitcoin becomes the global routing asset and the underlying asset for people to transact in all sorts of other currencies. And in terms of what's next in the future, of course, we want to deploy assets of Bitcoin. Now, we at Lightning Labs, we're building the rails and the infrastructure. We're not issuing the assets. And we have a number of people in the room that are working on that. And the goal is, we always see ourselves as neutral. We're like, other people are going to build our infrastructure, which is great. And then, we're in touch with quite a number of startups and other companies that want to issue on Bitcoin and hybrid assets. And what we'll see is, we've heard no promises, but a release coming soon, TM. It will come, that's a promise, but exactly when is always a question because with protocol development, things come up and it's like, late at night and then there's a bug and then you think it's going to be one day, but we know that it's possible and the code is ready to have these transactions on mainnet, so we're working as hard as we can. And by the way, we're doing a Taproot Assets developer call next Wednesday. It's noon in New York and midnight in Hong Kong, and we're trying to get every time zone we can because there's such a global developer community here. So stay tuned. We'll actually have another demo, a third demo for that for those that are attending the call.
Oh, I see. Quite looking forward to that. Although it's quite late for.
We've got it in California, New York, Europe, and Asia. So we're doing our best to get all the time zones we can.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. So maybe back to the Lightning Network itself, because right now we can see there's like around 5,000 BTCs in the Lightning Network. So some people may say that it's still relatively small and also maybe early. Although they developed very early, but it's still very early compared to some maybe like go ups or maybe things like that. So how do you see this kind of outlook?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that a number of people ask, right? So people sometimes look at DeFi protocols and they say like, oh, there's a massive TVL, it's like $1 gazillion or something, right? Lightning is not equivalent to those DeFi protocols. And why? So with the DeFi protocols, you're typically putting your assets there and you might be like staking or restaking or you're trying to earn yield and so on, but the assets are not moving, right? It's stagnant and it's different. With Lightning, you want the Bitcoin and Lightning, and soon we'll have hybrid assets, to move. If your Bitcoin does not move, it's actually not useful in Lightning, right? So the way that we think about it, and our Ryan Gentry, who's the head of BDA Lightning Lab, did a great podcast on this a while back with Lauren Shin, where she asked the same question. So it's an apples to oranges comparison, right? Another thing with a lot of DeFi protocols is you get a lot of tokens, and then the TVL is inflated, and then you have like every animal coin you could possibly imagine, and then it's like, okay, we have so much TVL. With Lightning, you want capital efficiency. That is the nature of the protocol. In fact, if you had $1 billion of Bitcoin and Lightning and it did not move, that would not be beneficial to the network, right? So with 5,000 BTC, over 300 million USD, and because of the USD price of Bitcoin has gone up, the total assets on Lightning has gone up. Theoretically, you could have the total, amount of BTC on Lightning Network moving, say, every minute. Now, that's not what's happening today, but that's what you want, because the more efficient that the capital is in the network and the more quickly it can move around the network, the better the network is functioning. So the ideal situation on Lightning is not maximum BTC, but maximum efficiency, with enough capital on the network to facilitate all these transactions. So like, maybe you have $1 billion, say a year on Lightning, but that $1 billion could move, around every hour, right? And you can have a huge amount of transaction on Lightning without the amount of PPL. So we want efficiency instead of maximum. Like you could even, by the way, have say $1 billion on Lightning that would be less efficient with fewer transactions than 300 million, because it matters where the Bitcoin on Lightning is and whether it is in the right place at the right time. The way we think about Lightning is you have super low fees, you have instant transactions, and you have lots of scalability, but you need to have money in the right place at the right time in order to send and receive, and you want this capital efficiency. So, and by the way, Alex Bosworth, a number of you might have heard of him, another team member at Lightning Labs, is always a huge source for capital allocation on the Lightning Network and ensuring that you have your capital in a channel that's going to be efficient. So yeah, at the highest level, Lightning is not about maximum TVL, it's about maximum capital efficiency, and you could have less capital, it actually makes more money in routing nodes and is more efficient, and we want the capital in Lightning to grow in that. Now, also taproot assets will bring a lot more routing volume to Lightning, and I believe it will mean there will be more Bitcoin deployed on Lightning, but it also brings more fees to the routing nodes that then can turn over that capital many times a day.
Yeah, cool. So especially with mentioning about the asset, another factors we talk about when we talk about the Lightning Network is about all the teams that are building around the Lightning Network ecosystem. Like many teams, actually, from my perspective, I see they have their own specialities. Like with Grid, they're essentially focused on the LSP, and the Phoenix, they just maybe focused on some like channel splicing, some this kind of solutions. So what might be the strategy and also the focus for the Lightning Labs?
Yeah, so the great thing about Lightning Network is, it's an open source community. Nobody controls the Lightning Network. There is a spec process called the Bolt spec, the basis of Lightning technology. And, in Bitcoin generally, we joke like everyone's always fighting and no one ever agrees. And in Lightning, we also have a lot of technical debates, although I feel like people are generally pretty nice. There's also a spec meeting happening, I believe, in Japan in September, where the protocol devs will be meeting and talking about the latest developments. For example, we heard about gossip 1.75, which is a way for nodes to communicate. That was finalized at the last spec meeting last year in New York. So we have different teams, building different implementations of Lightning with different specialties. And we also have something called the blip process, which is like BIPs for Lightning, where you can propose improvements to the Lightning network itself. So different teams have, as you mentioned, worked on different aspects, including splicing, where you can actually move funds into a channel, or with Breeze, they're focused on non-custodial Lightning transacting, so the ability to open channels with users of, say, a non-custodial wallet. The Lightning Labs, we're doing a million things. Sometimes we joke, I'm like, how do we do that many things? Maybe we need to sleep more. Please, and Michelle, please make sure you guys get some sleep. People that work ahead. Myself as well. But as mentioned, taproot assets and making Bitcoin and Lightning multi-asset networks are a major focus for us. And part of the reason why is because Lightning is a global community. And we see adoption, around the world, places like Latin America, here in Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa. And when we were talking to a lot of the developers and users, we heard that there was substantial demand for stablecoins, right? And if you look at the current stablecoin market, right, Tether is over, say, 100 billion USD, USDC is the number 2. You see trillions of dollars of transaction volume, and that's not happening on the Bitcoin blockchain or on Bitcoin technology, right? It's on ETH, it's on Tron. People want low fees, they want instant transactions, and they want scalable transactions. How many people in the world have access to a mobile phone, right? Billions. How many people have a bank account or Visa? Far fewer. So the reason why we chose to focus on multi-asset Bitcoin and Lightning is because we saw within these communities there was substantial demand for stablecoins. Now, I believe the people that have adopted stablecoins is a larger number than those that have adopted Bitcoin, although we don't know for sure. But the idea is, okay, we have all these people that want to use stablecoins. They might have hyperinflation, they might not have a stable currency. We also want to get them to adopt Bitcoin, right? So if they're able to use a stablecoin on the Bitcoin blockchain, they may not even know it at first. They're transacting over Lightning, great, they get the instant transactions, they get the low fees. But actually now it becomes very easy within, say, the wallet they're using or the application for them to also have some Bitcoin. So if anything, it's kind of a Trojan horse way to get more people into Bitcoin and bring them in, say via the stablecoin system or other assets that can be issued on Bitcoin. And that's part of why we chose to focus on multi-asset, because we just hear every developer we talk to that's building an application saying, like, when stablecoins on Bitcoin.
I was just about to ask you this maybe one extra question when stablecoin. But I guess maybe it's quite soon when type of asset.
As mentioned, we're building the protocol and the technology and the rails. We can't guarantee when people will issue, but we know a lot of issuers they want to make Bitcoin, the rails. We know that Bitcoin is the most secure blockchain. It has the most hash power backing it up. It has the most liquidity as an asset. There's huge demand to bring this all to Bitcoin. And in fact, for example, Tether was in its earliest days, I don't know if people know this fun fact, initially on Bitcoin, right, using Upper with Omni. Then they moved off it, they actually deprecated it. And, there's great demand to bring this technology back to Bitcoin. And in fact, we've heard a lot for those, I know we're going to hear from Super Tessin as well about bringing more programmability to Bitcoin and this new wave of development on Bitcoin. We have many people in the room that are building on Bitcoin. And having Bitcoin native assets is key to all this new programmability. People want financial applications. Well, what do you need? You need Bitcoin native assets. So the goal of Taproot Assets is to bring that to Bitcoin, and importantly, in a scalable manner, right? Where you don't have additional on-chain data or footprint, where you're not going to have like $100+ fees because there's congestion in your clogging the blockchain, which is hugely important in this environment where you don't want to have to pay like $100+ fee just to say send an asset.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's also on UX improvements for the Lightning users because we can pay just by the stablecoin USD, HKD, maybe something like that. By buy some coffee.
Yeah, and importantly, there are a number of other asset protocols out there. They are, say, more simple, but the trade-off is the scalability and the fee, it's incredibly expensive because it causes congestion when you're putting all this out on the chain. So when we were architecting Taproot Assets, shout out to our CTO Lalu, he really thought through how can we minimize the on-chain footprint, right? How can we ensure that we are able to store data off-chain while keeping it secure on the Bitcoin blockchain so that people can transact, they can issue these assets, and then you don't have a situation where fees spike dramatically because we know on-chain space is in demand, and we want to conserve that as much as possible.
So besides of this, Taproot Assets and the stablecoin maybe later on in the Lightning networks, there are also just do many progresses on the Lightning network, like including the Alt 12 and also PTLC, summary swap. Among this kind of progress, so which ones do you think maybe more promising or maybe noteworthy?
Yeah, so the Lightning community has been hard at work on a number of proposals to improve the network. So you mentioned a couple. So for example, PTLC stands for Point Time Lock Contracts, and that uses Schnorr signatures. And what that means is you can have both better privacy, and then you can actually reduce fees for things like channel opens. And a number of people in the community have been working on that. I know, we think that's very cool. Another one you mentioned, Alt 12, which is a whole combination of different improvements, including better privacy on the network, recipient privacy, route blinding. It also has something called offers, where you can have things like subscriptions and reusable invoices on Lightning, so a better user experience. You also mentioned, what was the third thing? Submarine swaps, yeah. The submarine swaps, we actually have been using those for quite a while. We have Loop, which is a liquidity service. There are a variety of approaches where you can use hash time lock contracts to do, say, from on-chain BTC to off-chain BTC and vice versa. We're also seeing that used, for example, Botanics has a developer that already built a Lightning bridge to the Botanics project, where they're using submarine swaps from Lightning into Botanics, and then you can go back out. But one of the things that we've been excited about, and we have a blog post coming soon, TM, is about what we call channel factories. And that is the idea that a variety of users that want to get onto Lightning can, within a group, open and close channels without always having to go back to the blockchain, right? Because in an environment where fees can go up substantially, always having to go to the chain to open a channel can mean the fees will be high. Now, importantly, and a number of people have asked about this, when fees spike up, well, if you're going to just send a transaction on the base layer of Bitcoin, it's going to be incredibly expensive. So at least if you're able to open a Lightning channel, then you can start transacting and you don't have to pay the expensive fees every time you're going to transact, which is why we want to bring things off-chain when it's smaller value transactions into Lightning. So with this channel factory concept, with a number of participants are able to open and close channels without, within this group, like factory, without having to go to the blockchain. And the way that we think about it on our team and at Lightning Labs is we know that fees can be variable, fees can go up on the Bitcoin blockchain, and we want to be efficient with block space, much like the taproot assets. And as a result, things like batching channel opens as well, where if you're opening multiple channels, you can put it in one on-chain transaction. The idea is to amortize the cost of on-chain Bitcoin fees such that users, either within this channel factory concept where they can open and close within the group, or batch channel openings, means that fees can actually be lower than if you're just, say, doing one channel open or, one-to-one as opposed to a group of people doing so. So again, thinking about an environment where fees are going to go up, we want to ensure that usability is key and that users that are getting into Lightning don't have to pay super high fees. And that's something that my co-founder Lalo is going to be releasing a blog post on that, and I believe there will be some code coming out with it, but we've got to get through the taproot assets release first. We've got a lot to do, a lot on our plate. But high level, ensuring that you can have usability and the ability for users to open channels without fees spiking, or at least trying to mitigate the potential high fees that can come and go on Bitcoin.
Yeah, wow, that's products you are building right now. And maybe one last question for this session is that since you are building lots of the things and quite successful in the Lightning Network, and there are also many builders want to build something on the Lightning Networks. So do you have any maybe suggestions for the?
Yeah, so we, within Lightning Labs, we build our own implementation. There are a number of implementations. We do a number of community calls. So as mentioned, next Wednesday, we've got one for the taproot asset dev community. On Thursday, there's also a developer call for the L&D contributors, because we have open source contributors. We have great technical documentation at Lightning Labs. Shout out to Leo, who was president of the Bitcoin Association of Hong Kong. He's now in Vancouver, says hello. He does our technical documentation, so definitely check out docs.lightning.engineering. There's so many great resources out there. On our team, we have Hannah, our dev advocate, who makes great videos. She did a great series on taproot assets to get devs running TapD. She's also done stuff around Terminal, which is a web UI for node operators, so you can check that out. There's also an L&D Slack. A number of people here are on there, where our team diligently answers lots of questions from the community. For those that are less technical but want to follow the developments, we have a newsletter on Substacks, lightninglabs@substack.com. It comes out every 2 or 3 months, where we talk about all the latest developments. It's funny, the newsletters are getting so long now because there's too much to talk about and we can't keep track. The next one will cover the big release of taproot assets, the Lightning version of that. And yeah, our team really loves chatting with the community. You can follow @Lightning on Twitter as well, where we tweet all sorts of things about the latest developments within the community. And then we have a number of people here from the team, so feel free to talk to us. But yeah, Lightning is an open protocol. We love the Bitcoin developer community. Taproot Assets is also fully open source. The community's been contributing. They've been giving us feedback. And yeah, please also do not hesitate if you guys have questions or feedback, because the way that we operate is we want to hear from the builders, right? And hear what's working, what's not working, and maybe there are certain features that are going to help what they're building, and then build to that. Because at the end of the day, we build for developers, and developers need to build this technology for the end users, and we need to make it accessible and usable. And the thing that we're passionate about at Lightning Labs is solving real problems for real people, and ensuring that Bitcoin and Lightning will spread to billions around the world.
Wow, okay, so many exciting things. Okay, so that's maybe the end of this session. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you guys.
So we're gonna have a final session from Super Tesla. And let's give Super Tesla a round of applause. Thank you.